You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
What's up, nerds? It's time for another episode of the ThunderQuack podcast. This week, we're talking our first look at Superman, Pokémon Legends Z-A, I guess, and some Mario Day news by leaker Pioro. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to the ThunderQuack podcast. I am your host, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, the incorrigible Joe Hogan.
I much prefer this title change. Let me tell you, I finally feel like I got one that sticks true to my heart.
I things are different. We've switched it up, and there's a reason for that. And we're just gonna talk about it right off the bat. The ThunderQuack podcast is now a weekly podcast. We will have episodes every Monday. But there are some I don't know if they're caveats, but there's some little addendums. There's a couple of little notes to make about that. So here's the deal. We just finished the ThunderQuack Patreon pledge drive, and we got some awesome support. We got some new pledges. We got some increased pledges from folks. We got definitely some people returning that were Patreon supporters in the past but dropped off for whatever reason. They've come back now. So we kind of accomplished what I wanted to, which was getting the numbers back up. It wasn't quite as exciting as I was hoping it would be going into it. We set some pretty high goals, and we didn't really manage to reach any of them, but we got pretty close. We got pretty close to $200 a month, and I think actually because we are extending one of the aspects of it until March 15th. So there is still time, and I do think that we'll still have an opportunity to get there. But one of the things that we were going to do is if we hit $200 a month, which I am confident that we're going to get within the next little bit, anyways. So that's why we're making this change. Is that we would go weekly with both the ThunderQuack podcast and Off the Record. So that's what it is now. So ThunderQuack is every Monday, and Off the Record will be every Tuesday from now on Patreon. But the difference now is that ThunderQuack is a week early on Patreon. So previously it would go live, like the early episodes would go live about like Monday night, Tuesday morning. That was sort of my rhythm on it. I am dedicating much more time to it now. I just to pull back the curtain. Like this is going to be my main focus for at least the next I don't know, probably 6 to 8 months. And if everything goes well, hopefully it stays that way. But this is basically my job, is what I'm saying, is that ThunderQuack is now my job, which people might have noticed over the course of February, a whole bunch of stuff ramping up. And that was me sort of like dipping my toe in the water and figuring out what stuff is going to, sort of like what different avenues we could use to sort of build up the audience and what was going to bear fruit the fastest. And so you may have noticed like new stuff on TikTok, new stuff on Instagram and YouTube and all that. And a lot of the experiments that I was doing have actually gone really, really well. I've seen some really, really positive results that sort of exceeded my expectations. So although like the Patreon part of the pledge drive didn't necessarily go as big as I was hoping it would, I mean, we definitely got support from the audience, and I'm so thankful for that. Which gives me the indicator that like, hey, like let's do this, like let's take it up to the next level. But it was sort of that other stuff that made me go, okay, we're gonna give this a go for real. So Um, the piece that is extended, before we get into like our news and everything, the piece that's extended is about 2 years ago, Amanda and I recorded the pilot episode of what was going to be our new podcast. The reason why we initially shut down ThunderQuack and why I was stepping away from Rebel Cells, and at that time it was Faster, More Intense, was to do a podcast called Let's Reboot Student Bodies. Student Bodies was a teen a dramedy, comedy drama show from like the late 90s, early 2000s that it was kind of Saved by the Bell ish, but it was a Canadian production. And Amanda and I were both huge fans of it. And the idea was that we were going to go through episode by episode and like break it down, and in the process we were going to put together basically a pitch and a pilot by the end of the first season to try and get like a reboot of Student Bodies made, right? That was kind of our plan. We did that first episode, and then like immediately after that some things shifted and Amanda's priorities had to change, and she needed to step away from podcasting. So I out of that was then me going and doing Perfect 10 and Force Perspectives and reconfiguring everything that I was doing with podcasting with ThunderQuack, which has sort of led us all back to this moment now. um, uh, and so that episode that we recorded has just been sitting, and I have not released it. It's never been released. So what I'm doing is for everybody that is like during the pledge drive, right? So throughout February, and now like this extended till March 15th, till the middle of the month. Everybody who is a new supporter, or if you're an existing supporter, if you either increase your pledge amount, so you can go into your pledge and you can edit it, and increase it. It stays that you stay at the same tier because there's only one tier, but you can increase the amount manually. So like by $1. So if you go up from $5 to $6 a month, that this counts. Or if you switch over to annual, if you're a monthly and you switch over to an annual Patreon subscription. So those sort of three things. It's really easy for the existing ThunderQuack patrons that are only at $1, right? For them to upgrade because they just pick the new tier. But if you're that, or if you're one of our old patrons that's at one of the higher tiers from back in the day, you're also still going to get this. I'm going to send out the first episode of Let's Reboot Student Bodies. So that's the only way you'll ever be able to get it. I don't think I'm ever going to offer it again. Like, this is a one-time deal. I'm going to put that out there. It's for, the most hardcore ThunderQuack listeners that have been with us for a long time. But yeah, so that's there. And that's going to go until March 15th. So I'm hoping that can nudge us. That can just nudge us over that $200 a month mark, and get us to that milestone that we were trying to hit. And I think it will. I think that once everybody hears this, that'll happen. But yeah, so those are kind of the two big changes. We're going monthly, but that means like will go up on Patreon on the Monday, and then it'll go out on the regular feed the following Monday. So if you're asking yourself why is this news so old because you're listening on the podcast feed, it's because it's last week's news. It's literally last week's news. But that's, that if you support us on Patreon, you'll get it a week early. So I hope that is an incentive that makes our Patreon worth it, along with all of the other bonus content, because along with getting this podcast a week early, you'll also get Off the Record every week, which I'll be recording, and it'll go up every Tuesday as well. So that'll be me just kind of grabbing a single topic and talking about it. Probably less like timely stuff, a little bit more, I sort of the way that I've generally been doing Off the Record as it is, but yeah, so stuff that's a little bit more outside of the news window. But yeah, so that, and then you also get all of the bonus content that we did for the pledge drive. You will also get early access to Force Perspectives when those episodes go up, as well as Rebel Cells. As soon as that episode is ready, it'll be on that feed. And of course, you'll also get Perfect 10 1 week early on Patreon, the same as you get ThunderQuack a week early. So yeah, that's every. I guess that's like the ThunderQuack news on this one. But I get we can get into like the actual geeky news. And Joe,
The
you can,
news.
yeah, the news, and you can have something to actually say, Joe. Uh,
Eventually.
yeah.
They don't come for me. They come for you.
I don't. I think there's a lot of people who are enjoying your contribution to the podcast very much, Joe.
Well, I want to meet both of them.
I Awesome. Let's get into it. Let's get into the news. So first up on the list, a piece of news that I'm very excited about, and that is that James Gunn teased us with our first look at Superman's costume in what is now just like Superman. But here's the thing, guys. You got to read between the lines on this. In his Instagram and like Twitter announcements of this or whatever, he is very careful to consistently refer to it as Superman, all caps. So
Mm.
when we write it down, it is Superman, all caps. That's the title of the movie, just Superman. Um, the interesting part of this that a lot of people they're gonna argue with me at first, but this is the truth. There has never been a Superman movie simply titled Superman.
What was the first Christopher Reeves movie?
So
Superman the
Superman
movie?
1976 is Superman the movie. It's
Oh,
Superman
okay.
colon the movie,
Okay.
right? And then the follow up is Superman 2, and then
Okay.
Superman 3, and then Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. So those are the original movies. And then obviously Man of Steel, sorry, Superman Returns before that, Superman Returns, and then Man of Steel, and those are all of our like standalone Superman movies. So there's never been a Superman movie just titled Superman, just like flat Superman. And so yeah, I don't know, I'm down. I dig it. It was previously Superman Legacy, but yeah, the all caps. I don't. This is a very like 2020s thing to do it all caps. Um, but because we're all online so much that like you can sort of it gets out there, right? That in print it's called Superman, all caps. I But more importantly, we got our first look at Superman's costume, not the whole thing, but the most important part, which is the logo, the Superman S, and the S that is on this costume is reminiscent of two things, and I think this is really interesting to note. It is based on a design originally by, I believe, Alex Ross, because it's Kingdom Come, the Kingdom Come Superman logo, which instead of it being sort of like a swoopy serif S, with the sort of the ball serif on one end and the flat serif on the top at the front of the S, sort of the classic Superman logo that we're used to. Um, it's essentially just like sort of a very thick vertical line, like a diagonal. It's not vertical, like I guess a diagonal line across the diamond shape, right? With sort of like a thicker piece at the top to imply the top of the S, and then a line at the bottom to sort of imply the bottom. Um, that S has been used by sort of two other incarnations of Superman, other than the Kingdom Come Superman, which we got to see that one in Crisis on Infinite Earth, on the CW, when they did the big crossover, when Brandon Routh reprised his role as Superman in that, which for people who didn't watch the Arrowverse stuff was interesting because Brandon Routh was also the Atom in the Arrow universe. So he was kind of playing both characters in Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is interesting. But he had the Kingdom Come S, which people will also note is red and black instead of red and yellow. Um, but more recently, sorry, I guess the other time that we got to see it was with in Batman Beyond. Superman in the future had that S, which was sort of a nod to the fact, because Kingdom Come is a future storyline, that like in the Batman Beyond alternate future, that he took on that same S, and it worked for that because it was a much more stylized. It worked with sort of that Batman Beyond future aesthetic. It worked really well. But more recently, we got to see it a version of this as in Superman, the new animated series, My Adventures with Superman, which was last year, August September of last year, which is fantastic. It's a great show. It's so good. And so our on-screen Superman and like big screen one and our small screen one will both have this very similar S. um, I imagine that at some point we are going to see in the solicitations that he's going to change to that S in the comics as well. That
Hmm.
that it'll be a little bit more consistent across the board, and this will sort of be something to mark the new era of Superman. But I'll bet you anything that it doesn't happen until next year when the movie's coming out. That like so solicitations are usually about 3 months ahead, so I will probably see it around like December or January of next year that Superman's costume is changing, and that there'll probably be like a whole DC Comics status quo change as well. Like they'll probably do some sort of like a new 52 type of thing that'll coincide with Legacy coming out, that'll link into what they will want to do is trick us into thinking that it's all in continuity somehow, right? Because that's Marvel and DC love to do that. They love to trick new readers into thinking that these worlds are connected when they are most definitely not, right? um but yeah, so I love it. I love the look of it. I love the texture of the suit, and I love sort of like the aesthetic choices that are being made for this. I think it's really strong. Um, but I mean, it's all that we've seen is sort of his chest with the S on it and some snow. He's kind of got some snow around him, so we'll go ahead and assume that it's some Fortress of Solitude type of stuff.
Well,
But
I was gonna assume it's a direct sequel to Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire, but
of course, yeah. I mean,
okay.
because
I
everybody
mean,
knows how successful Frozen Empire is going to be, and
yeah, it's a
yeah,
crossover. They love crossovers in comics.
it makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. But Joe, I know you're not a huge Superman fan. You're not going to have a ton to say about this,
I don't.
but how do you feel? Like what do you think of the look of this S?
I mean, yeah, the logo is cool. It's sleek. There's something very nostalgic about it. Yeah, I've never been a big Superman guy. I don't. My friends give me crap because they think that I actively dislike Superman. I don't. I've never been a Superman guy just because I feel like he's too OP. So for me, the stories really, honestly, the Man of Steel movie, even though I don't think it's a great movie, I've probably never been more invested in a Superman story just because like he had like him, but military soldier versions of him kicking his butt through the movie.
Hmm.
So for me, it was like, oh, the stakes are really high. Like this is really fun and interesting to watch. But like I've just never really been that big on Superman. But the fact that it's kind of a new slate, that stuff always does kind of interest me because as much as I actually really liked Henry Cavill's take on the character, but I'm hoping that like this is kind of in the sense that Man of Steel was, where it's just a new, fresh story that will kind of turn things on its head for me, and
Hmm.
at least the way I, kind of feel about the character. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do, but I have no dog in this race. Like I'm not invested at all,
Yeah.
but the possibilities are exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Gunn's uh sort of style and the way that he does things, it'll definitely be fresh, right? I'm very interested to see how much it actually focuses on Superman because the cast is huge.
Mm.
There
Oh,
are
I don't know anything about the cast. Who's
So it's got your like sort of your staples of the Superman universe, right? We've got Superman, Lois, Jimmy Olsen,
mm.
Lex Luthor. We actually just got news. I don't think it's been confirmed. Maybe it has been confirmed, but we got Perry White casting news the other day as well. But it also includes like Mr. Terrific and Hawk Girl and
Okay.
I like there's I don't know, there's like five or six other characters that were all sort of part of the table read picture that was put out just recently. And yeah, so like a lot of like non-Superman characters, and it hasn't been confirmed, but there's rumors that Supergirl has been cast as well.
No, cool.
So it is going to be like a
That's a lot
larger,
though.
yeah, it's a larger universe type of story. But I do hope that it stays at least somewhat focused in on Superman. I Because one of the problems with the DCEU is that like we moved on way too fast from the individual characters into like them trying to make it the MCU, trying to
Right.
do
Yeah.
really Endgame, right? Like they were trying to fast
Yeah.
forward to Infinity War and Endgame, and you just can't do that. The only reason that Infinity War and Endgame work is because they were like a decades long build over 20 movies to get there, right? That's why we cared. Um, but
Look, let me ask you.
yeah,
Well, I mean, first of all, is this information out there? And second of all, if it isn't, speculatively, if that's even a word, um, do you feel like this needs to be another origin story, or because I personally, like, everybody knows the origin story of Superman, right? Like,
mhm,
I feel like, hey, let's just kind of jump into an adventure already. Kind of like how the Ed Norton Incredible Hulk was just like, yeah, he's already Hulk. He's been Hulk for a while.
yeah.
With Spider-Man Homecoming, he's been Spider-Man, you know, we saw him in Civil War, but like he's already previously established to be Spider-Man. Can we just jump in? Superman's already Superman. He already
Yeah.
like figured it all out, and like let's get an adventure. What do we know what the deal is going to be, and B, if we don't, what is your take on that? Do you feel like we need to start over again, or do you just kind of want to launch into it?
Yeah, I don't think that we need an origin story for Superman by any means, right? I think that it actually makes the most sense to jump in to a Superman story in media res with him established as Superman.
Mm,
I and then you can give us pieces of it over time, right? And there are other ways to deliver the details of his origin and exactly sort of like the finer points of it. But I think that Gunn has talked about it a little bit, and I believe that there's no origin in this one; that it'll just get straight
cool.
into it. One of the things that's sort of been referenced a lot in um, sort of the pre-production phase of this project was All Star Superman, and All Star Superman very notably is like it's the end of Superman's story. But it comes in with him like fully established, with the relationship between he and Lois fully established, all of that sort of thing. I don't know how much of that will sort of like already be the case, whether or not like Lois will already know that he's Superman or what have you. But it'll certainly be a story that picks up with an established hero at the center of it, and that the world knowing who Superman is. I think the important part of that is that like you avoid the pitfall that Man of Steel and Dawn of Justice both fell into, which is the world having to react to Superman. And when you have to tell that story in sort of a modern era, you have to get into the cynical perspective of it, which is, I think, the biggest failing of Snyder's stuff is this idea that Superman, um, in the real world, quote unquote, the Batman Begins, Nolan style approach to superhero storytelling means that like we have to actually see people react to the reality that there are aliens in the universe,
Yeah.
right? Um, and most people are going to be pretty negative on that, right? If you guys heard those sirens, they were on my end. But yeah, I don't want to see that again. I want the world to have like accepted Superman, and for him to be the beacon of hope and justice that he's meant to be. That's I'm there. It is less about what people want to see, which I think people will tell you that they want to see a dark, gritty, realistic Superman, but more from me about what people actually need to see. And I trust Gunn. I think that he gets that. I think he understands Superman and his importance. But yeah, Superman is one of those characters. This is the thing. We have over the last 10 years gotten so many stories that are the what if Superman was evil, what if Superman was bad, what if Superman did the wrong thing, what if we, didn't trust Superman, right? We've gotten all of these cynical takes on the what if Superman idea, that what we really need right now is Superman full stop.
Mm.
And his choice to change it from Superman Legacy to just Superman, it like that communicates a lot to me, that he is approaching this from the perspective of like, no, this is Superman, like all caps, look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, no, it's Superman, right? I and I think that's going to be the right way to do it, especially to distance from the DCEU, which is something that's going to need to happen right off the bat, sort of like to kick this story off and to kick off this world. I DC, I think that Warner and the old guard sort of at DC looked at that era, coming off of the Nolan movies, which sort of coincides with the rise of the MCU. They looked at that and went like, we have to emulate what the MCU is doing, but we have to do it in our own way. Like we have to do it with our own sort of signature. And their solution to that was to lean into the things about the Nolan universe that the audience thought they were vibing with, which was like the darker, grittier nature of it, which I don't think is actually why people were into those movies. I think it was just Nolan telling very compelling stories, right? And the byproduct of the way that he was telling those stories was that they felt darker and grittier. But he was not out to make like edgelord Batman movies, right? Like that wasn't his deal. But what we ended up with as a result was edgelord Superman and edgelord Batman fighting each other, and then like these weird sort of gritty versions of all of the other DC characters joining them, which created this just totally like everything is the real world, but like everybody's so cynical and depressed and angry in this real world. So we ended up with like a stylized world, but not stylized in a good way, because they were trying to again emulate Marvel without doing what Marvel had done, which was Marvel is like, this is the real world, but it's a heightened real world with superpowers and crazy technology and aliens and all of that, but really injected with a lot of the humor, right? Like a lot of that sort of quippy, Iron Man, Spider-Man, let's make jokes every 30 seconds sort
Mm.
of thing, right? And that's a lot of the characters were reimagined with that lens. So they went these two different ways. But what DC needs to be, and what it became sort of in the 80s and through the 90s, in juxtaposition to Marvel, which is a very grounded, like Marvel is very much from its inception like everything's science based, and even the fantasy stuff ends up being science based, of like, oh, Thor's magic is just technology that humans don't understand, right? Sort of like that sci-fi route that was very much
Mm.
Stan Lee's ethos. But DC went the mythic route with it, and in the process, Gotham became, the gargoyles on all of the statues. Everything is, or sorry, like gargoyle statues on all of the buildings, and everything's dark and black, and like sort of this nighttime, I almost like medieval uh image of Gotham, and yet a modern city, right? And then Metropolis became the city of tomorrow, right? And it, like they took that moniker and they sort of ran with it, and so it became very high tech and gleaming silver towers and all of that sort of thing, as this vision of what a metropolis could be. So you had sort of like these more, um fantastical ideas of their world, and the characters matched that and became gods, right? And that was one of the things that people complained about, I think, with Superman a lot in the early 2000s, was that he was overpowered and he had become like this god among men sort of thing. And so a lot of the stuff was like, oh, you got to depower him, you got to bring it back down to earth, and blah blah blah, which is fine, but I think it misses the point. You can make him a god, it's fine. You just have to make it, even though he's a god, he acts like a human. That's kind of the charm of the character. But I think that Gunn will take it in that direction. I think that his version of this world will be a comic book world, and it won't be, you know, the streets of Chicago are the streets of Gotham. But then when we get to Gotham will look like a stylized the example that I would go to is in the comics recently. There's a series called Gates of Gotham, which is like a mini series that that went into actually like Gotham as a character, like the city as a character,
Hmm.
and its backstory and its history. And that to me is sort of like very similar to like Arkham City, like that version of Gotham City in the
Okay.
video game. It's very similar sort of thing, but maybe a little bit less like neon, and because that game sort of sought to make it a little bit more punk aesthetic, because that was an edgelord Batman story as well. But that's a good edgelord Batman story. Like those games are awesome. Those three games are fantastic. But yeah, I think it'll be something a little bit more like that, and I think that Metropolis will be more futuristic.
Why did you leave out Origins? And I knew you left out Origins when you said 3. I know what 3 you're talking about, but
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't leave out Origins. I think that Origins is actually a fantastic game. It
okay.
just Origins, it's sort of like an appendage to that series, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not quite in it. Like I don't know, even like aesthetically, it's a little bit cleaner, right?
Mhm.
Like those three games, Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight are like very dirty games, like
Yeah.
like just aesthetically. And I love it. I love the aesthetic of those games. I think that they did a really, really cool thing with Batman with those ones. But Arkham Origins kind of like brought it a little bit back towards what the modern comics look like, which I
Okay.
also like. I would actually say that I probably prefer the aesthetic in Origins than to the one in the Asylum
Okay.
series. I But yeah, I mean it is in continuity with those games, right? Like it's a prequel to those other games. And I think it's good. I think it's a good game, but I don't know. I just, when I talk about the Arkham, I just talk about it as the trilogy because it's kind of how it's referred.
I was curious if what your reasoning was, because I see that all the time, but in my head it's like they're all 4 of the same series, so they're
Mhm.
all like, you know what I mean? Like I just okay, yeah, it's a prequel, and yeah, it's a little bit different, but like, and I also understand that that was done by a different studio, right? Like wasn't
Yeah.
that not Rocksteady? I think it was
Yeah, I think
another studio did it,
it was
but
like, I don't know. I want to say it was like Ubi Montreal or something like that, but
okay.
yeah, I don't remember exactly who did it, but yeah, it was a different studio, and it's a different. I think it's still Kevin Conroy's Batman, but I think like the Joker is Troy Baker, and
Right, it's not Mark Hamill, yeah.
they switched up a bunch of things in it. And the Joker's not even the bad guy in that one, really.
Yeah.
It's Deathstroke, right? But who's like sort of your main villain. But yeah, um, yeah, I don't know. I just, for shorthand, I just refer to it as the Arkham trilogy
Okay.
because that's kind of how quadrilogy just doesn't have the same ring to it, right? Everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I don't know, I'm excited for what's coming, but I also like just cautiously optimistic.
Mm.
I talked on the Patreon bonus episode of Off the Record that I did, the Patron's Choice one, where people asked me to talk about the DCEU. I did talk about Superman Legacy. This was before this news, sort of at length. And one of the things that I said on that is that I just feel like a lot of the choices have been very safe. The casting choices are all very, like, they are all very good casting choices, but the lead like the main cast of Superman, Lois, Lex, and Jimmy, they're all white. And to
Mm,
me, in the year 2024, it feels a little bit tone deaf, and it feels a little bit like like um placating to the wrong crowd, right? Like it, like I said in that episode, and I went into way more detail than I will here, but um it felt an awful lot like a studio note of like, hey, don't do what Disney is doing with Marvel and Star Wars. We don't want that. We don't want that dialogue about this movie. Everybody straight down the middle. Like please, cast these characters as they appear in the comic books.
mm,
Um so it feels to me like that was a note, and that's like a Warner Discovery David Zaslav sort of note that's coming down.
mm,
Because I don't think that Zaslav is a particularly decent human being, based on the way that he treats that company and the creatives within it. He definitely treats it all as commodities, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has some very very backwards ideologies, um, about what should and shouldn't be in movies. I yeah, because this whole approach to Harry Potter, to this Harry Potter TV series, and the fact that they're out there promoting the fact that J.K. Rowling is involved, as opposed
mm,
to distancing it from J.K. Rowling, I think says everything that I need to know about David Zaslav and what his, let's say, political ideology is. And so yeah, the Superman cast being all white, and then Gunn being clever and going like, well, I'm gonna get some diverse characters in here by bringing in Mr. Terrific and Hawk Girl and the characters that aren't comic characters, like Otis, who is a character that was created for the first Superman movie. Playing with that, being able to make Otis and Eve Tessmacher, people of color. Like you can kind of see that he's doing what he can to keep it diverse, but at the same time, like it was definitely noted that like Superman, Lois, and Lex need to be white people.
mm.
Because I there were man who it's Nicholas, is it Nicholas Holt? Yeah, Nicholas Holt. Is Beast from X-Men First Class, right? He is Lex, and I think he's going to do a very good job. He's a very good actor, and he plays bad guys really well, like interesting, sort of relatable bad guys very well.
Hmm.
I think that there were better choices. I think that there were better options, but they were outside of the bald white guy zone. And so yeah, yeah, I don't know. The other part of it is that like Lois has been sort of shifted in the last few years, where there's a lot of interpretations of her that make her Asian American. Um,
Ah, okay.
and so like My Adventures with Superman is a really good example of that, but there have been some like comic incarnations and that sort of stuff, so like not mainline comics, but there have been a few incarnations where people have like played with that, and it's sort of become um an established thing. I think it was a result of the way that Bruce Timm drew her in Superman the Animated Series, because she had like very, her eyes were just stylized in that way, and that's just like
Well,
Bruce Timm's style.
I
But
was just gonna say, most women that Bruce Timm draws have the exact same eye shape. So like,
yeah, but there was something about like specifically Superman the Animated Series that like there was like just sort of like a fan thing of like,
mm,
because she's got the jet black hair and all of that people just started to like sort of like as fans, like in fic and that sort of thing, sort of ascribe that to her, and it's sort of like eventually percolated to the surface to where I think some of those people were able to actually do that, with actual DC produced stuff, to the point that yeah, she is definitely Asian American in My Adventures with Superman, but Jimmy is also African American in My Adventures with Superman. So I like they played with that a little bit, which then makes me look at the casting that they've done for Superman, sorry, just Superman, and go like, someone said something, someone said no black stormtroopers in this movie, please.
Right.
I because they're watching what's happening with Disney with any changes that they make to the Marvel stuff. Gets that crowd all riled up, and then anytime that anybody that's not a 30-year-old white man is announced for a Star Wars property, the Ben Shapiro gets on the internet and starts saying this is the woke agenda, right? So I think that like Warner Discovery wanted to avoid that. This is all pure speculation on my part.
Mm.
Like I have nothing to back this up. This is just my feeling. It's just a vibe I get, and I could be way off base, but yeah, it just feels very interesting in 2024 to be looking at a cast of a major superhero movie and going like, this is very whitewashed. But it's not whitewashed because the characters are all white originally, right? But it's just like, I don't know.
There's,
It's
there's,
just how I feel.
there's white snow on that logo in that preview image.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I just think that there's opportunities to stretch outside of that and to bring more diversity to these properties that have been traditionally just a bunch of white people.
Yeah,
Um,
no argument here.
yeah, and it is just always it's my thing with it is that representation is not about pushing an agenda for me as much as it is about just I want media to reflect the real world that we live in,
Yeah.
which I think can be difficult for people in sort of middle America, and that I include like sort of the middle Canada. We don't really have a term for it, but like the same idea up here. um I think when you live in those communities that are predominantly white, that you see the world and go like, but this is what the world looks like.
Mm.
But um the majority of people live in the coastal cities, and in our coastal cities our representation is very different. It's much more varied, so I don't know, that's the perspective that I have living in a city like Vancouver, which I think you share. We've talked about this before, I
Oh
think,
yeah.
like you
Yeah.
live in New York, right? So you're every culture is represented in the places that we live.
Mm.
So I want my media to reflect that, right? And I also just think that a uh diverse creators and actors and stuff like that just makes it more interesting. Like it just adds flavor to the world. That's it.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so where we're not just getting one perspective and one take on a character, but that we can have multiple takes. So I don't know, we'll leave it to Marvel, and hopefully the X-Men casting comes around and is a little bit more interesting. I mean, like with Fantastic Four, they've got Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic, which definitely takes that character who is a white man and makes him Latino. So like that, you know, like I'm happy over there on that side. So, the DC stuff, I don't know. Like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic, but yeah,
Time will
it's
tell.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It once we see some stuff in motion, I think that's I think we'll have a better indicator. But the last thing that I'll note before we move on to the next story is that there's an image circulating online of a leak of David Cornsweet in the full costume. It is AI. It is fake. It is 1,000% fake. They've gotten really clever with this stuff because what they did is they basically exported it and then exported it and then exported it. So it's artifacted all to hell, and then they put watermarks all over it. So it's actually hiding a lot of the Telltale AI nonsense because the image quality is so poor. And they did it on purpose. But if you really look at it, and the funny thing is that James Gunn pointed this out, like when he was asked
Mhm.
on, I think it was on Threads that I saw it. I don't know if it was on Twitter as well, but he was asked by somebody, is this a real image? First of all, the costume doesn't match the color of the image that was released, so it's not real. But he responded back. He was like, because somebody was like, "Is this real?" And he was like, I don't know, let's take a look at the weird blob on the guy's head on the left, or the like mangled mess that looks maybe like a hand on Superman. Like take 2 seconds, use your critical thinking, take a look at this image and realize this is definitely AI. Right. So yeah, I just for those who are out there, like, you know, sending that around and that sort of thing, like, it is not real. It's not a leaked set photo. It is completely bogus. They're not even like, it's like in a city street or whatever. They're not filming in a city right now. They're filming in like Norway or something, because they're doing presumably all of the like Fortress of Solitude stuff first, right? Like they're not even in North America shooting at the moment. And that snow, from that first day of shooting on Superman, is like, that's real snow, guys. Like like this is like, I think it's Norway. It's like they're somewhere doing some Arctic storytelling stuff. Like, it is they are not in a city right now doing bank heist shoots. So yeah. But let's move on. Let's move on to the next thing. The next one is real short. We got our first look at Tron Ares, which is the third Tron movie. We know not enough about this movie for me to really talk about it at length. I don't know if we even have confirmation that it's like a continuation of the previous two Tron movies, and the TV series Tron Uprising, which is in continuity. But aesthetically, it looks exactly like Tron Legacy. It just looks like a 2024 Tron Legacy, which I'm all about. I love Tron Legacy so much. I mean, I love the original Tron as well. And then Tron Uprising, the TV series, is also fantastic. But yeah, like, I'm a huge fan of Tron Legacy. I am super bummed that this, is not a direct continuation of that story. It's not a direct sequel, but we don't know how much of the original Tron is going to be sort of like carried through in this story. Also, I'm not getting my hopes up, because the sort of synopsis that we have at the moment is that a a, a program from the grid makes it into the real world, and they say, like, for the first time, which is nonsense, because the Tron Legacy ends with Olivia Wilde's character, with Cora coming into the real world with Sam. And so it's like, but you could get away with it because she wasn't a program. She was a oh shoot, what were they called? It just fell out of my head. I had it a second ago. But anyway, she was like, they were like they're not programs, because the programs were all, as they've sort of indicate with their name, they're all functions of the system, of the grid. So they were all written by Kevin Flynn, right? Um, and then take on lives of their own and everything, and go outside of their programming, whatever. And that's what's interesting about Tron. But they are all man-made. But then there were the characters that she was the last of, right? That like manifested inside the grid, like they were created by the nature of the grid. So they're like sentient, uh, uh, sort of ISOs. That's what they were called, isolated algorithms. So they're ISOs. They were just created by the grid, so they're not actual programs. So when they say like the first program to ever leave the grid, it's like, I guess that's technically true, because she wasn't a program, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm just being an obnoxious fan. But what that says to me is that the majority of this movie will not take place in the fun grid sci-fi neon world that we all want to return to, but will in fact just be Jared Leto being a jerk in the real world. The other part of it that has me very, very hesitant on this is that Jared Leto is the lead. But Cameron Monaghan's in it as well, so that's cool. The rest of the cast is interesting. I just like, Jared Leto is just so polarizing to a lot of, like, to people who are like online and know about.
I hate the guy. Like, honestly, I hate
Yeah.
the guy. I don't care about Tron. I don't care. I don't care. No offense to anyone who does. I don't care about this movie at all.
No, for sure.
Specifically because he's in it. Like, what little modicum of like
Yeah.
possible interest. Like, oh, if it's a neutron, oh, okay, maybe I'll go check it out. Jared Leto's the lead. No, I'm good.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at
the
right now.
the thing that drives me nuts is like I don't know why you would ever go with Jared Leto when Jake Gyllenhaal is right there, because like because they're literally like they're like from an aesthetic point of view they're the same thing. From a
Mm,
box office point of view they are the same thing. Like neither one of them's opening a movie, right? Um, but Jake Gyllenhaal, by all accounts, is like a charming, fun, affable guy.
yeah,
Jared Leto is a nightmare to be around, and when he
yeah,
plays the Joker, he sends dead rats to his co-stars, right? Like the dude's a train wreck. Like I don't
yeah.
understand how he's still working in Hollywood after the
He
stuff that he
sucks.
did on Suicide Squad. So I yeah, like it just I don't know. I don't it doesn't quite make sense to me. I don't know why you wouldn't just grab Jared Leto. Disney has a great relationship with him. They made a terrible Prince of Persia movie and then they made it up to him by making by putting him in a Spider-Man movie, and he's the best part of that Spider-Man movie. You know, like just like Michael Keaton is the best part of that Spider-Man movie, right? Like the like I love Tom Holland. Everybody who listens to the podcast knows how much I love Tom Holland as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But those three movies stand on their villains a
Yeah,
1000%,
yeah,
right? But that's the deal is that like, well, we're gonna have Tom throughout. We're gonna have Zendaya I can't remember the name of the actor that plays Ned right now, but like we get our and Marissa Tomei, like they're going to be consistent throughout, and they're all wonderful. That's a great cast in those movies, but those movies are awesome because of the bad guys, because of the guest stars, right? Like the I'm here for this movie and then I'm gone. Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio was so good at like tricking us into thinking that he was a good guy, and then the turn, and then loving him as the bad guy. It's just man, he was so great. So I don't know why you wouldn't get him instead. Uh,
and in the end, he wins. Even though
yeah, well,
he doesn't win, he still
yeah,
wins.
yeah. So yeah, for me, it's always going to be anytime you announce that Jared Leto, as if it's not a movie that I'm like, oh cool, that's a gross story that I'm not going to watch anyways. It's like fine, let him have it. But if it's something like cool and interesting, like a Tron movie, then I really don't want it to be him. I also like they're promoting him as the lead, but here's the thing. So he's in black and red. Red and orange were coded as the bad guys in Tron, both in the original movie as well as the sequel in Legacy. Um, Blue and white are the good guys, and sort of like a aqua green are the good guy colors. Um, and this look that we got is definitely a bad guy. The other thing is that some people will notice that like, oh, his identity disc on his back, it's a triangle and not a circle, which is like, okay, that's cool, that's interesting. But some people were like, oh, there's some writing. And Jonah Marie, who's been on Rebel Cells a few times, big Star Wars fan and Star Wars animation fan specifically, she's a huge Tron fan like I am. She was like, there's some writing there, I can't quite make it out, but I don't like, what does it say? And another person was like, and I looked at it and I was like, I think it says Dillinger, which is the surname of the bad guy from the first movie, and then Cillian Murphy's character from Tron Legacy. I and I was like, I think it's Dillinger. And then I got an email from Disney with the link to the press release and like the official like high res, because everybody just sort of been ripping it from Jared Leto's Twitter, Instagram, or whatever, which was like all sort of like artifacted and compressed, right? Um, so I grabbed the like the official still and I zoomed in on it, and 1000% it says Dillinger, which means that he's playing the bad guy, like he's playing the antagonist in some way, like it like. So I don't know. It is it gonna be that Tron Ares, and Ares is not usually a heroic character in Greek mythology. Let's start there. Um, if his character is Ares, is the titular Ares, then it's like it's Jared Leto, and we're following the bad guy. Like it's an anti-hero story. Like I don't. That's not what I want from Tron. So I don't know. I am hesitant on this one, but more Tron is more Tron, and if Cameron Monaghan is a good guy, I'll be okay with it because we love Cal Kestis around these parts. So, yeah, I don't know, him getting to be in more stuff is exciting. I can't remember the rest of the cast, but there are some other cast members that I'm like, okay, all right, like, so I'll give it a fair shake, but like I said, I'm hesitant on it. There's a lot of red flags for me right off the bat.
Mm.
But we'll see. Well, this is again, that's sort of our catchphrase lately, is because there's not a lot that's been happening in present time. There's a lot
Yeah.
of like, here's all the stuff that's coming. There's a lot of we'll see in the air at the moment.
I mean, thanks to all the strikes, which rightfully so.
Yeah,
It's going to be a minute
yeah,
before we
totally.
start getting more meaty stuff. But
Well, let's move into the next one. This is one that you are excited about, and that
oh,
is
hyped!
Pokemon Legends. Is it just, are we just saying ZA
I
or
don't.
Z to
I don't.
A? Like,
I've heard Z minus A, which I don't think is correct.
no,
I don't
absolutely
know
not.
if it's ZA or Z2A. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like, there is the hyphen, it's in the logo, it's in all of
Yeah.
the copies. So to me, it's like, I think it's Z to A,
Yeah.
which I think is supposed to be a play on like A to Z, right? But we're flipping it Z to A,
Mm.
and the Z and A are stylized like Zygarde. And this is the game takes place in the Kalos region. It's all in Lumio City, which is sort of the Pokemon world equivalent of Paris. The whole game takes place in one city, which is interesting because Pokemon Legends Arceus was an open world game, right? Like, that was
Mm.
kind of the whole point, was that it was sort of the first open world Pokemon. Although Pokemon has always kind of been open world ish, but like gated by progression, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, but at a certain point, every Pokemon game is an open world game. But they sort of like, they designed it to be a little bit more open world with Pokemon Legends Arceus. So this is the sequel to that, which doesn't really mean anything specifically. It just means that it's, in the same sort of gameplay, which is kind of Let's Go, but not really, and still has battles, but I don't know. It's more mostly just trying to catch Pokemon
Yeah.
in Arceus as opposed to battle them. I yeah. So it's interesting. Mega Evolutions are making a return, and it comes out in 2025. So we're probably a year away from it. I imagine that it'll be a March 2025 release.
If that's the case, then, because like there is a lot of, I mean, I guess this leads into a news story later, which I won't get into yet, but there are a lot of
Mhm.
uh credible sources citing that the quote unquote Switch 2 has been delayed from this year to spring of next year.
Yeah.
Um, the window kind of going around is March, which is funny because that's when Switch came out too. Was also March
Yeah.
of 2017. Um, but we don't really know for sure why. The big speculation is, oh well, the next Mario Odyssey giant game is not ready. They need that killer app
Yeah.
for when it launches. But imagine, dude, imagine if the Switch 2 were to launch with a new Super Mario, not like new Super Mario Brothers game, but like, the
Yeah.
next 3D Mario game,
Yeah.
a Pokemon Legends game, and possibly Metroid Prime 4, because that's
Yeah.
another game that's just kind of been announced and we have no idea what's going on in that game. Nothing has been said about it in years. That might be like maybe the strongest launch lineup that I have ever seen in my life. Like, I can't think of a bigger launch lineup
Yeah.
than Metroid, Mario, mainline Mario, and a
And Pokemon.
big Pokemon game. Because like it's obviously not Gen 10, but it's still like a huge
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. I mean, throw into that Animal Crossing, which was like
Oh
so
man.
successful on the Switch. Like a year ago, they went, okay, we're done updating this game. We're not doing any more updates. Instead
Yeah.
of continuing that as like a sort of a live service game to keep people on the Nintendo Online subscription, right, which they absolutely could have done. They cut it off. They said we're not developing anything new for this game. They were very pointed about it, and then we haven't heard anything from anybody about an Animal Crossing anything since then. To me, yeah, I think that Switch to launch window, maybe not all launch like day and date with the launch of the console, but launch window is absolutely those 4 games.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like, I have my own reasons for being very confident in saying that. But yeah, the Switch 2 is imminent. I mean, I think that we are going to get an announcement this month. I think that Mario Day
So
might be the thing.
I'll okay. I spent a lot of time on the gaming leaks and rumors subreddit, and they actually very much take it very seriously, like which
Yep.
leakers are credible versus which ones aren't. And the thing that I'm seeing about that lately is that originally, before all of these sources started saying, well, Switch 2 is delayed, everyone was saying March we're gonna get the Switch 2 reveal. We're gonna get the announcement, like the release date,
Mm-hmm.
and probably see that Mario game. Now what everybody's saying is because of that delay, we're not actually going to see a reveal until like E3 time in June. Even though Nintendo doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
there is no E3 anymore, but like that June direct that Nintendo kind of always does, that's when we're going to see the
Gotcha.
Switch reveal. So
Okay,
this is
so
that's not none of that is confirmed. Like
yeah,
it,
yeah,
but
of
it's
course.
just like what a lot of the very reliable leakers are saying
Yeah.
right now.
I mean, like, if that's the case, then what we'll get this weekend on Mario Day, I
Mm-hmm.
will almost certainly be a Mario game reveal that is a game that, like, that's on Switch too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be like what they did with this. I mean, with Pokemon Legends Z-A, the reason why a lot of people are like, this is definitely a Switch 2 game is it's next year, it's 2025, so it kind of has to be. Like, why wouldn't it be? But also, like, they gave us no details, they gave
Mm-hmm.
us no gameplay, they
Right.
gave us a very abstract cinematic and a title, like a logo reveal. And I think
Yeah.
that we'll get the same treatment for Mario, where it'll be like, hey guys, there is a Mario game coming in 2025. It is the sequel to Odyssey. And yeah, whatever the gimmick is, whether they're bringing the hat back or if it's something new, that will basically be the meat of that reveal. It'll be a 10-second, 15-second trailer. And it'll be like uh, uh, some wahoo wahas, and then I mean, like, if it's an Odyssey sequel, it'll be like that hat like flipping towards the screen
Yeah.
and then landing on the logo, and then that dissolving to 2025, right? Like you can almost like see it in your mind, or at least I can. What that'll be. So I don't know. I could be wrong, but I yeah.
I mean, should I just quickly go into that?
Yeah, because
Okay.
there's not really
Yeah.
much else to say about Pokemon Legends Z-A.
Okay.
Like, it's like, that's it. That's all. I gave you guys all of the information that we have right now. The only other thing to say is that Joe and I are super excited because we both loved Pokemon
Yeah.
Legends
Oh
Arceus.
man,
So
it was so good.
yeah, it's a
That
great game.
that game got such like crap over not looking as good as other
Yeah,
games on the Switch, but the game was just super fun, and I didn't really
yeah.
care. I can't wait because I honestly think it might, in my opinion, might be the best Pokemon game ever made.
Hmm.
It's definitely up there for me. If it's not number one, it's up there. But yeah, okay. So another leak that kind of dropped. Mike, you and I like these types of leaks that don't jeopardize anyone's jobs.
Yeah.
So this one particular leaker named Pyoro, Pyoro, is considered a tier 1 leaker on the gaming leaks and
Yeah.
and rumors subreddit. So he has made 13 quote unquote predictions. All 13 have come true. So they regard him as, like, when he says something, it's pretty much gospel, unless something, in the short time between he says it and then whenever he predicts it's going to happen changes, whatever. But so far he's 13 for 13. He's saying right now that for Mario Day, March 10th, there will be something involving both Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Doors remake for Nintendo Switch and Luigi's Mansion: Dark Moon for Switch also. Now, I probably could be like, oh yeah, well that's kind of an easy guess to make, right? It's Mario Day. We know those games are coming. We don't really know anything about the second half of the year for Nintendo, other than we're assuming these two games will be out by June. Um, but this guy, like, he's has a perfect record, so I don't think it's a guess so much. It's like maybe there's some sort of presentation or something coming where Mike, you could be right. I do think he would have mentioned it if we were going to see like the name revealed for the next Mario game, because like this dude will know a week in advance about what's going to be shown on a Nintendo Direct and be like, yeah, we're going to get this and this. And then, the Direct comes out and boom, everything he mentioned was there. Very, very rarely is he surprised by anything really big from Nintendo over the past, I'd say, year or so. So either way, we're going to get something, whether it's new trailers or release dates. I'm hoping both. And I'm really excited for both because I never played Thousand Year Door. I've actually never played any Paper Marios until Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64 came to NSO, the online service, the Nintendo 64 part of that. And I really love that game. And then the Super Mario RPG remake, which is the precursor to the Paper Mario games, that just got a remake. So I played through that last year, and that was amazing. And everybody says Thousand Year Door is like the best Paper Mario. So I'm really excited to finally play that. And Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, I'm excited to play because I associate that with a really sad time in my life where I had just gone through a breakup with this girl that I was so hung up about. And that game came out and I got it for myself to kind of like lift my spirits. And it just wasn't like, I was just in a bad mood all the time and it wasn't helping. And I eventually just stopped playing it and then traded it in because like every time I picked it up, I associated it with like feeling yucky. So I'm excited to finally go back and play it because I love the first Luigi's Mansion. I love Luigi's Mansion 3. And I'm in a much happier time in my life. So I feel like I'm going to appreciate it a lot more now. So I'm excited for both of those two releases. What is your experience with those two games, the original versions of those games?
Yeah, so I've only played the first Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube.
Oh, okay.
I haven't played any of the other ones. And Paper Mario, I played the first Paper Mario on the N64, but not to completion. Like I rented it.
Okay.
Played as much of it as I played in that time period, and then returned it and never played it again. I am much more Mario and Luigi fan when it comes to the Mario RPG type stuff.
Okay. Cool.
I never played through Mario RPG either. It just didn't hook me. The times that I had my hands on it. So yeah, like I've never played Thousand Year Door, but yeah, I mean, like I recognize that the Paper Mario games are awesome games. Like the humor and the writing and everything, the
Oh,
localization for them is all like top tier.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's worth people being excited about. I don't know that I will necessarily be jumping into any of these, but yeah, like it I mean, it's good news for Mario fans. It's good news for Nintendo fans for sure. Like I fully support it, even if I'm not myself going to play them.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. So that those leaks are like less exciting to me than the prospect of anything else. But uh, yeah, yeah,
Are you going to play Luigi's Mansion, or are you just kind of like, whatever? Because you mentioned Paper Mario. I don't know if
yeah.
maybe I didn't.
No, I probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. It just I'm
You're a
like I like
Ghostbusters fan. How?
yeah, I don't know. Well, it's not. It's only like minorly Ghostbusters vibes, but I don't know. That's a certain type of game. They're kind of
Yeah.
action puzzle games.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, because it's like, oh, well, the ghosts are hidden in here, and you have to like solve these little puzzles in order to find them all and catch. And it's like I liked more Luigi's Mansion fine on the GameCube, but not enough that like I would sing its praises necessarily. Like I think it's a fine game. I
Mhm.
think as it is with most Nintendo stuff, like they make very solid video games. It's not my type of thing. It's like I'm also not going to play Mario versus Donkey Kong that just came out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that
Like
one, that was
I
whatever
have
about that.
zero interest in it. Um and like I got Toad Treasure Tracker or whatever and
Oh,
Captain Toad.
don't talk smack about that game, man. I
No,
love
it's
that
there's
game.
no smack whatsoever because
Okay.
I look at it and I'm like, yeah, man, like vibe and everything I'm totally down with. But then you get into the like this is like the puzzle game aspect of it, and I just kind of lose interest. I don't know.
Ugh.
It just doesn't hold me for long enough. So like with Captain Toad, like I played a fair amount of it, but
Mm.
it just never quite once I put it down, I just never picked it back up.
Oh, man.
Right. So it's not a, it's like, and that's not like a dig against it. It just never connected for me.
Mhm.
Right. And puzzle games are very rare with that for me. Like, there are not a lot of puzzle games that I will like, especially like that type of a puzzle game where like I'll play it to completion. So, um, I thought that Captain Toad would be an exception to that because I was like so into the aesthetic and the vibe of it, but it just I don't know, it just wasn't enough.
Oh, man, that's
Um,
such a bummer.
yeah,
I mean, whatever, but it's there are so few people I know who have played that game, and every time I get my hopes up that, "Oh, did you like it?" And, like,
yeah,
nobody likes Captain Toad as much as Tina and I, like, my fiancée Tina and I
yeah.
love that game.
I'm like, I think it's a great game. I think it's like it's definitely like a stellar accomplishment in terms of
Mhm.
like game design and that sort of thing. It just like I probably played about 4 hours of it, and I was like, I think I have my fill of this,
Yeah.
you know. But like on the flip side of that, it's like I think that you're the same when it comes to a game like Fortnite, right? Where it's like,
Oh, I don't care about Fortnite at
yeah,
all.
like I can play that like forever, like jump back into that repeatedly because
Mm,
I love the gameplay of it, and then like you just give me a bunch of quests, and then if I can unlock some Ninja Turtle stuff, then I'm all about it. Which was the
mm,
most recent thing that I did in Fortnite, right? It was the turtles stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I am much more. I need a little bit more action from my games,
mm.
but I don't know. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second in the next segment. Before we do move on to that, I just really quickly I want to run down the box office for Dune Part Two, which I super successful. The opening weekend domestic was 81.5 million, which when you compare that to Dune Part One, which was 2021, it was a pandemic movie, but it was 40.1 million, and obviously, you know, they consider that a success. So, I Part Two getting this massive opening, 178.5 million global, super big opening. I mean like the global opening is bigger than the domestic opening, or sorry, the not the domestic opening, the domestic total was for Dune Part One, which was only 108.8 million, right, and 433.7 global for the lifetime. Not I guess
Wow.
not lifetime, but like sort of like that initial release, right? Um. So yeah, I
What
mean
when did that release, though? Was that a pandemic release?
yeah, it was 2020. It was November of 2021. So it was
Okay.
just at the
Kinda.
beginning of us kind of
Okay.
getting back to the theater.
Okay.
It was probably like the third, maybe fourth movie that I saw back in the theater
Okay.
after the pandemic. Um, so yeah, we will compare that to the rest of the opening of this past weekend. Bob Marley One Love was a distant second place with 7.4 million. Ordinary Angels, which I don't even know what that is, was 3.8 million. Madam Web still hanging on, fourth place
Alright.
with 3.2 million. Considering how bad the movie is, that's impressive. And then I don't even know what this means. The Chosen season 4 episodes 7 and 8 rounded out the
W
top 5.
what?
This was all coming like this was coming from IGN is where I grabbed all of this information from article over there. With 3.1 million. So like I don't even know what that is. That sounds like a TV show, like a streaming show
That
that got a
that
theatrical release.
that sounds
That
like the title of a Kingdom Hearts game.
yeah, it's like what this shows, and sort of the commentary that's been going on, and the reason why I put it in the news, like Dune Part 2, totally rad, great movie, go see it. I saw it and I loved it, and go follow us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, because I'll do a review and post it up on those in the next day or so. But um yeah, I it's notable because like the box office has just been soft as heck in
Mm,
2024.
yeah.
I yeah, yeah, so Dune Part 2 having this very killer opening weekend. I mean, this is the beginning of the summer movie season now.
Yeah.
It's crept its way all the way into March, because we've got Ghostbusters coming. I mean,
Whew.
we Kung Fu Panda 4, I think, is out this weekend, right? I and then we've got Ghostbusters on the 21st, and then I is it the 21st, 22nd, whatever, and then
22nd is the Friday, but technically the 21st.
my tickets are
The
for the
21st.
21st. That's why I'm thinking that way. Yeah, so
Yeah.
the 22nd, and then a week later we've got Godzilla and Kong, right? So yeah, like we're fully into it. Like
Mm.
we're talking about temple blockbuster movies. Um yeah, and if you go back a couple episodes, we did our rundown of the 2024 slate, and like there's a lot of really cool stuff. There's a lot of franchises, but the big three are notably missing, being Marvel, Star Wars, and DC. Like we don't have, I don't think we have any DC releases for 2024. Like we don't have anything until Superman. We've
Mm.
got Deadpool and Wolverine for MCU this year. That is it. And then we have no Star Wars movie until 2026. So yeah, it's an awesome year, but it is full of, like, I think these more surprise hits like Dune, and I think that Ghostbusters is actually in a good position as a result, because there's just really not a lot else to look forward to. um
I hope it does
yeah,
well, man. I want more. Like, I really, really
for
wanted to do
Ghostbusters,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're going to talk so much about Ghostbusters over the course of the next month. We'll have a lot to say, but yeah, I mean, I think it'll do. I think this bodes well. I think this bodes well. People want to go to the movies. They want to go see stuff. But I think what the other part of this is that people just also want some different stuff. And I think this year being a breather from those other franchises. Granted, we haven't had a Star Wars movie in the theater since 2019, but a breather from the MCU and DC, sort of like taking up all of the oxygen in the industry, I think is actually a good thing, because I think that
Yeah.
when they come back, the one MCU movie we've got this year is going to be a strong one. So like that's good. At least it's not, the Eternals. Um, no offense to the Eternals, which is a fine movie. It's just doesn't have the punch that Deadpool and Wolverine is going to have.
Mm.
Non MCU fans, non comic book fans, are excited for this movie because they care about Deadpool. They care about Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. So, um, but yeah, like just to get a bit of a breather and let some of these other properties have some oxygen. Let Planet of the Apes have a little bit of space, and let Furiosa do its thing later in May. I think is going to be really good. They don't have a Marvel movie to compete against, so yeah, I don't. I think it's going to be a good year for movies, but it's going to be a very unconventional year based on compared to like the last decade.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. I'm
Oh, it's
excited.
gonna be awesome.
Go see Dune, everybody, because I mean, like, I'm not that worried about it. 81.5 million in its opening weekend, and there's going to be a lot of people who see it over the course of the next couple of weeks as well. It's doing just fine. I think that is it Warner Brothers? I don't remember who makes the Dune movies, but
I have
I
no idea.
I think that they're going to be talking to Denis about Dune Messiah, which was not part of the plan. But the way that part two ends, come on, we need it. We need it. We need Messiah, and we need Children of Dune, and all. We just need the whole thing. Just keep making it. Complete the story, you cowards. But that's it. That's all of our news. I yeah, this is like new for us. So we're gonna switch over from that into another segment. But before we do, I just want to tell you guys about Patreon. Um, the news is old, as I said, right? And this is going to be a funny thing for the next little bit as we adjust to the new status quo here at ThunderQuack. But if you want the news hot off the press, you can go to patreon.com/ThunderQuack to get episodes 1 week early, weekly episodes of ThunderQuack off the record, and tons of other great bonus content from all of the podcasts on the ThunderQuack Podcast Network for just $5 a month. Of course, you can also do the annual. That's my secret tip to you guys. But this is we're on the second half of the show, and the second half of the show starts with a new segment. What games are you gaming? So Joe, what games are you gaming? What video games are you currently playing?
Oh man, so I just finished Days Gone on Steam. It was really good. I'm currently playing through Dark Forces Remastered. Oh, awesome. And I have also just started a few days ago Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the PlayStation 5.
Nice. How is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
Oh man, it's so good. It's so good. I wish. I feel like you and I would have an amazing talk about it. I wish you were more into Final Fantasy VII and all of that more than you are, because honestly, phenomenal game. It's so good, man. The mini games are good. The new card game Queen's Blood that you play inside of it is so much fun. I'm spending not more time playing that, but I never thought I would spend so much time on an in-game card game as I am with that. I'm like finding everyone I can to like play against. I'm buying all the cards that I can get throughout the world to like make my deck stronger and everything. It's so fun. And the characterization of these characters, like, it's just, this is how I saw this story in my head as a kid. And like, what I love about the remake series is that they are so unafraid to embrace the silly and the, you know, it's not just edgy Cloud. It's like all of the charm and humor from the original game that's kind of glossed over in like the later Final Fantasy VII things like Advent Children and you know, all of the little anime episode and like all that stuff. Like, they, for a little while, they tried to make it super dark and brooding and edgy and everything, but like, they're so back to their roots with this. Cloud is a dork, and like the side characters or mate, like, it's so good, dude. It's so good. The mini games are fun. Well, most of the mini games are fun. There's a few that aren't. The overworld is really fun to play on. Playing, it's not an exact overworld. It's more like, there's giant open world areas, but you have to like, you know, there'll be like a narrow passageway to get through, or you have to fast travel to get between them or whatever. But it's so well made. My criticisms with it are so few. That dude, this, I went into this excited, but not like as excited as I was for, you know, Tears of the Kingdom or like, you know, the really huge games. I knew I would enjoy this game, but honestly, like, I'm a little bit past the halfway point in terms of like the chapters. This might end up being my game of the year because I don't know how anything is going to top it the rest of the year. I mean, to be fair, we don't really know much else of what's coming other than like a few Nintendo games in the next few months, but like, as of right now, I don't know if anything's topping this game for me.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what's coming for the video game industry for the rest of this year, and that is nothing. They've just been laying everybody off, and these executives are going to discover very quickly when we're approaching Q4 and there are no releases for holiday season that they messed up, that they did not do a good job of managing the industry in the last 12 months leading up till now. But
well, as long as the shareholders got that continued growth, nothing else really matters about
that's
the
all they
video
care
game
about,
industry.
Right? I mean, it's not just the gaming industry; it's just across the board, right? That's all that matters. Is we just gotta do the things that the shareholders are going to be happy about, and, you know, damn the consequences to real human beings. Increase the prices of everything, lay everybody off. That's not a recipe for disaster. definitely not going to prolong the recession that everybody refuses to accept that we're in the middle of. But that's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Let's talk about video games. Let's distract ourselves. Yeah, I mean, I think that I will probably return to Remake and finish it because I did buy it when it came out. Because I really want to like Final Fantasy VII,
Mhm.
but there was so much to manage in the combat system in Remake, and I hear that they've done a little bit better job of streamlining that for Rebirth. Um,
I'm loving
it
it, man. Combat's really fun.
Yeah, if I can just put it into baby mode like I did Final Fantasy 16, then
There's a baby mode. Yeah,
yeah,
there's
and
remake, and this one has a baby mode too.
yeah, yeah, I need to reinvestigate that and just and yeah, just play through the story. But I don't know. I The other thing is that I'm just not in a position to pay full price for a video game right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
I planned on I was gonna pick it up for Tina because Tina wants to play it on Steam. So
yeah.
I was like, oh, I'll wait for a sale. It's $70 on Steam.
Oh,
Like
nice.
remake is still
Yeah.
$70. Like, come on, man. Like I know you're
Oh,
cashing in
remake
on the
is. Oh,
hype.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
remake is 70 because like I don't think
They want
Rebirth
you to buy
coming
the
remake is
bundle, right? They want you to buy
yeah.
the two games together.
Well,
Um,
it's the large DLC from
mhm,
remake and the game itself, but it's just like totally full price.
yeah,
That game is 4 years old though. Like no 4-year-old game should. And it released on PS4. So when it
yeah,
came out on PS4, it was $60. So now it's 70 on Steam because it comes with the DLC, and you have to buy the DLC.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know.
I'll jump back into it at some point because the DLC I think is included in PlayStation Plus, which I have. So
Okay, cool.
yeah, like the whole thing is available there. Um,
It's all very
but
good, and the DLC is important
yeah,
to the story in this game.
yeah. I feel like I need to finish Sea of Stars first, though. I feel like that needs to be my
Yeah,
priority.
Sea of Stars was awesome. Yeah.
I need to get back to Sea of Stars and finish that one off. But yeah, but I mean, like right now, like I have just been playing. I will not bring this up every week because I will always be playing it from now until eternity. I think, but that's Ring Fit Adventure on the Nintendo Switch. It's like
I need to get back into that because it was really good, right?
this is the thing with Ring Fit Adventure is that I am in the best shape that I've ever been in. Um, I from playing this game and I feel better and just like generally like life is easier because I can actually like pick things up and move things around without any difficulty. And I'm not like it's not like I've gotten into incredible shape. I'm just in proper shape, right? I actually saw a friend yesterday that I hadn't seen like since probably before the pandemic, and he was like, "Hey, you look really good." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." I was like, "Yeah, I've been playing Ring Fit Adventure."
So, let me
So
ask you
it's
how
actually effective, but it's a good game too. It's also a fun video game. Like the game stuff in it is good game stuff. But go
what
ahead. What
what
are you saying?
what exactly are you doing? Like, what's your routine every day you pick it up? Because when I had
Yeah.
first started playing it, I was just doing like one level and then fell off from it. Like, I do one level a day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like it kind of lets you know when you should take a break. So
Mhm.
I play until it asks me if I want to stop for the day.
Oh, okay.
Because it'll go like which is usually 15 minutes of exercise time, which is like 15 minutes of actual like in game time. Um, I but yeah, it ends up being probably about 30 minutes of like
Okay.
total like real world time. So I'll
Mhm.
do the stretch, right? You do your active stretching first. Always do
No.
that. You're gonna hurt yourself if you don't. And then I'll play. It's usually two levels, maybe like one of the bonus levels, like one of the like sort of gym challenge type things.
Mhm.
That's usually what a workout consists of. Um, and yeah, I mean it's good. I what it tracks on the Switch because it's not tracking you the whole time. It only like does check-ins at the end of the level for your heart
Yeah.
rate and
Mhm.
stuff. So it's not really tracking your calories accurately. So it'll tell me that I burned like 100 calories or something like that. But I'll track with my Apple Watch and my watch will tell me that like when I go hard, like when I actually like put in the full effort, and I don't pick the easy, because you get to pick like the different exercises are the different attacks, right? So it's
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
can kind of go like, well, today I'm just gonna like take it easy, I'm just gonna do these simple ones or whatever, right? um
The yoga attacks, right?
yeah, like
Like super easy.
if I go hard, it'll be like I'll finish my 30 minutes and it'll be like you've burnt like 500 active calories, like,
Mm.
which is a lot. So yeah, cuz yeah, like that's like half a meal basically, in calories that's burnt. So that's been my routine. And then it'll be like you should stop for today so that you can come back tomorrow strong, and I'm like, okay. But every once in a while, especially if I've had to like skip a few days, I'll come in, like I'll do double that. Like
Okay.
I'll do a full hour, and get real sweaty and gross, and feel really good about it. But yeah,
So
it's fun. I really like it.
when you tell me, "Hey, I'm gonna do my workout real quick and shower before we start recording,"
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
that's what you do it? That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
and the thing that's great about it is that actually, like, when it's part of my regular routine, like as long as my routine doesn't get broken, and I can play it on a regular basis, it's also my gaming fix. Like
Mm,
it also serves as a fix for, like, it's like, oh, I played a video game today, because for me, the ADHD part of my brain that needs to play video games is the dopamine seeking, right? So it's like what I do is I usually am playing it before my meds have kicked in, right? So
okay.
I take my ADHD medication at around 8:15 every morning, and then that's usually like I usually have taken it like right after the girls have left, like right after Crystal has taken the girls to daycare and school. So because they try to leave at about 8 o'clock every day. So I take it, but it takes about an hour for it to kick in. So usually it's like I take my pill and then I go and I start my workout. So it's actually in the period of my morning before the brain fog clears, but it actually
Mhm,
like, because it's a video game and not just a workout, because it's like, oh, I'm trying to do these things and clear these things and get these goals and whatever, and I'm focused on all of these like dopamine fixes. It's it keeps me on track before my meds kick in. And then once my meds have kicked in after I've eaten and taken a shower, it's like, okay, now I'm ready to like face the day.
mhm.
The thing that sucks is when like my routine gets broken and I'm doing it later in the day, and like,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But yeah, it's been really really good for me, and I highly recommend it to anybody who is like reluctant to work out. Crystal and I got gym memberships a year ago, and I went to the gym a total of like 7 times in that year, because it involves like getting changed and going, like doing the whole
Yeah.
thing. You got to have your bag and your water bottle, and like, and you got to drive to it, and deal with your locker and other human beings, and is that machine available, whatever. um Whereas with this, like, I don't have to go anywhere. I just push the coffee table to one side, roll out the yoga mat, put on the little leg strap or whatever, and I'm good to go. Like, and so I can just do a 30-minute workout 4 or 5 times a week and actually make progress and actually feel like I'm getting somewhere.
Mhm.
As opposed to, oh, I got to go to the gym, I'm supposed to go twice a week and I went once, right? So it's like, yeah. And the equipment is not like, it's not like it takes up a bunch of space or like requires setup or anything like that. It's fantastic, and it's all just like resistance training, right? It's all just body stuff. And then the ring itself, which is just like a resistance fitness ring, right? So it's just, for people who don't know, it's basically just like you're just either like lifting it, trying to push it in, like it's basically like a metal ring with rubber on it that you're just like trying to compress or pull. And by doing those things, you're working out different muscles in your body. And the exercises are dead simple but effective, like, but they're actually doing things, right? So yeah, I love it. I love Ring Fit Adventure so much. um and I'm like a an evangelist for it. I bought it during the pandemic. I bought it in 2020.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with the intent of like, we can't go anywhere, I'm gonna use this to get in shape, and then like played it 3 times and never picked it up again. And then, when I got laid off, one of the things was like, I've got all of this time, I should at least, make good use of it, get in shape. and started playing it in October, and like have not looked back. Like it's a game changer as far as I'm concerned. Once you really get into the game, and then you're looking at like, oh, I need to make these smoothies to do this because this challenge or whatever, and so then you're going back to other levels to get the ingredients, and so like just the regular like RPG video game stuff, but you have
Yeah.
to like exercise to do it. And you could cheat it. You could totally cheat it. You could totally just hold
Yeah,
the
but like,
controller and
what is the
sit down.
what
But
is the
like
point of doing it that
you
way?
don't want to, right? So yeah, it's really good. It's really, really good. But I just finished Power Wash Simulator. I'm done Power Wash Simulator.
Okay.
But I have moved on to Hard Space Shipbreaker, which was like a Steam game from a few years ago. It's on the consoles now, and it's a PlayStation Plus game. So if you've got PlayStation Plus catalog, then you've got access to it, so you don't even have to buy it. But I'm gonna. This is we're not sponsored, but I'm gonna use a sponsorship type of attitude anyways, because Curtis Finley, who is part of ThunderQuack, who does Epic Marvel podcast and Cartoon Afternoon with me, and we used to do Pullbox podcast, and he's been on ThunderQuack a million times, and Quiver and all sorts of stuff. His wife works for Blackbird Interactive, and Blackbird made the game.
Ah, cool.
I So that's why I started playing it, because of that connection. And I started playing it yesterday, and it's fantastic. It's a great game. It's so good. Um, so the concept of the game is that you're basically they call you Cutter. You don't really have a character. It's all first person, but your job is to break down old spaceships into their component pieces for salvage. And so you have two main tools. You've got your cutter and you've got your grapple, and you use them to cut apart the pieces of the ship, and then the grapple to like sort them into three things. You've got a furnace, you've got a processor, and you've got the barge. So it's like if they're like components that can just be put into another ship, like a console or like a computer or something like that, or lights, like you're pulling those out and putting those onto the barge to be taken away. And then valuable stuff, nanocarbon, you're putting into the processor to be broken back down and reused for new pieces. And then the stuff that's basically the junk, you're throwing into the blast furnace. um, very simple mechanics to begin with, and then it just gets more and more complicated as you go, because it's like, oh, now there's electrical hazards. Don't use your cutter for too long; it will combust. um, and there's a great sense of like dark humor in the game, because right off the bat, before you can start the game, you have to fill out a bunch of forms to go work for Lynx, which is the company that's hired you to go into outer space and break down these ships. So they got a bunch of waivers and employment forms that you got to fill out. There's a terms of service that you have to fill out. This terms of service is not like, there's no online component to this game, so it's not like a terms of service like when you're gonna play a game on your iPhone or whatever. You have to just scroll through it and agree to it. You could do that. Don't read through the terms, because they are bananas, and it's stuff like so I we're gonna make a backup of your genetic information, with which we can produce what the company calls a spare. So if something happens to you, we'll take the most recent upload of your consciousness from when you were sleeping, and download it into the spare, and and then you can continue with your work. So
Beautiful.
so essentially you can never die. Um, Here's the thing though, like, and this is, you got to read these terms. Uh, Lynx owns your spare. They physically like own like any spare that you have. So I guess reading through the terms, you're like, I guess be careful then, right? Don't die, because once you die, then the company owns your body
Yeah.
in perpetuity, right? I'm sure that they'll sell it back to you, but I you're responsible for all of your own, all of the costs incurred for producing a new spare. Even though the company owns the spare, you're responsible for all of the raw materials required to produce it, as well as, you know, the labor and parts and blah blah blah, maintenance of the facilities and machines required in order to produce a spare. So every time you do it, it's going to cost you money every time you die. Um, Also, like, all of the equipment that you need, you're renting from the company, so on a daily basis they're charging you. So you start the game at a negative, like, and we're talking negative like billions that you're gonna have to work off by breaking down these ships. So it's like I messaged Katie, Curtis's wife, and was like, who runs Lynx? Tom Nook? Like what, like, hey, so you get through all the forms and you go to start the game, and it's just sort of like there's nothing on the screen, there's just some text and like a sort of an image, but you're reading through this, and it's sort of like Portal style, right? It's like kind of a robot voice telling you, like, prepare for the genetic backup process, warning, I like, this process will destroy your original body. So in
Oh
order to
God.
make the genetic backup, in order for you to have access to your spares, we're gonna have to kill you, which means that you start the game as a spare. So this, like, just by signing the forms and giving your thumbprint or whatever, you've now, like, they now own you. So, like, right off the bat, they basically, like, tricked you, because nothing in the terms said anything about, like, this is going to happen. It's not until, like, the process has already started and your character is already screaming in agony that it's like, oh, by the way, your body is about to be destroyed, but don't worry, because you'll wake up in your spare. And it's like, it's too late now, right? No turning back. It's fantastic. So the game is just full of that kind of, like, dark humor, and this very dystopian, distant future that maybe isn't that distant, where everybody who works for Lynx is just an indentured servant, like, they're slaves, right? I Yeah, it. But then, like, the game itself is super fun. It's so hard to control yourself in space, like floating around in zero G. And I was saying to Crystal, I was like, but that's the point. That's the whole idea, is that, you know, like, this job is dangerous. So I and Katie, when I told her that I had started playing it, she was like, so how many times have you died? I've been playing for about 4 hours. And I was like, I've only died once. I got sucked into the processor. I didn't realize that I couldn't get that close, and it sucked me in and was like, "You're not material to be processed. You're not nanocarbon," and just, like, destroyed me. And it's like, yeah, I so it's super super fun, super fun, and it's just like a nice relaxing. These are the types of games that I play. I'm either playing Fortnite, or I'm playing, like, a story driven, you know, action game,
Mm.
or I'm playing, like, a meditative, like, you know, I power wash simulator, or, you know, I'm breaking down spaceships, and sorting pieces. I'm working, pretend working,
Yeah.
when I have real work
Power
to do.
washing.
I got actual stuff to do, but I'm pretend working. Um, Now, granted, it's bitterly cold and gross outside right now. Like, it literally just snowed this morning here. But when it gets a little bit warmer, I will gladly go outside and power wash some stuff. Power washing is I don't know if you've ever actually power washed something, but it's super satisfying.
I
And
have not.
Yeah, Crystal's parents have a power washer, and when spring hits here, eventually it'll pretend like it's coming, and then it'll go away, and then it'll come back, and then all of a sudden it'll be summer. But I when it finally hits here, I'll uh, I'll have to go out into the backyard and clean off our deck and everything, and I will get the power washer, and I will have a really great time power washing the the brick and everything, and getting everything nice and shiny and new looking out there. Yeah, but yeah, hard space shipbreaker, super great game. Um, Blackbird is not a big studio, so, like, literally, like, go buy the game, because you will be supporting them. And the industry kind of needs it right now,
Yeah.
and they're one of, like, the few I dev studios out there right now that isn't owned by Embracer groups. So which is one of the reasons why the industry is hurting so bad, is because of how much Embracer and EA and Sony and Microsoft have bought up over the course of the last 5 years, because they just keep buying things and then shutting down studios and laying people off and stuff. So the indie studios that are out there that deserve our support, definitely go support them. Go buy some video games, keep the industry healthy. But buying the big releases doesn't matter. They're all doing fine. The AAAs are all fine, but like go find some weird niche thing that nobody's really talking about like this, and get that, play that. But I think that's all our gaming for this week. The next segment, I've given them funny little titles, which I'm quite proud of. So the next segment is show and tell, which is where we'll talk about what we're watching. I don't actually have a lot to say here. I haven't had time to watch anything new. I've only watched the first episode of Avatar. I really wanted to have finished it by the time that we recorded this episode. Hopefully I'll finish it by next week. But yeah, Crystal and I watched the first episode. It was fantastic. This is not only having watched the first episode is not a quality judgment.
We're talking about the live action one,
the
right?
live action,
the new live action. Okay.
Yeah, the new live action Last Airbender. My mind is blown at the aesthetic and the quality, like the visual quality of this show. It looks every bit as good as like any of the Disney Plus, like MCU Star Wars stuff. Like Netflix put a lot of money into this, and the team that made it, like it is a live action version of the animated world. It's fully formed. It does not feel like they're on a TV set. It does not feel like they were working within a budget. Right off the bat in the first episode, you've got like an earthbender running away from some firebenders, and he does some earthbending, and it was just like, dang, that's cool. It was so rad. And yeah, I mean, like, I love Avatar The Last Airbender a lot. And Korra, I actually think I like Korra more than I like Last Airbender, which is not the usual sort
That
of
is
take on
not
it.
something I've ever heard before.
Yeah. I really, really, really like this live action interpretation of it, and I'm excited to watch the rest of it. So, yeah, I will be getting to it as soon as I can. It's just, life, kids, all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that is pretty much it. I mean, I just finished Dragon Ball Super, and
okay.
I think we'll talk about that at some point. I want to watch the movies first, so I need to watch Brawly and Superheroes. But
yeah, the movies are awesome.
yeah, once I finish those, I think you and I will have a conversation about Dragon Ball Super. But
Yeah,
I will just say this: I loved it. I loved it so much, and it's such a slow start. Like that first,
yeah.
it takes a real long time to get into it with the Beerus stuff, but once you do, like especially like once the sort of battle of the gods,
Yeah,
storyline is concluded and you get into like Resurrection F and then everything after that, it's just super great. It's so good.
This guy's got jokes.
I loved it. I loved it so much. I loved everything that they did with Goku, and I loved like Vegeta continues to be a standout character who I hated when I watched Z initially. Like I thought that he was a one-note character. Yeah, but anyways, we'll save it because I think we can get into like a very long conversation about Dragon Ball. And we'll save that probably for next week.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's exciting.
But yeah, so I finished that and so the next thing on my list will be X-Men, going back and rewatching the 90s X-Men cartoon in advance of X-Men 97. But
I keep forgetting that's coming out so soon.
This month, like
that's crazy.
2 weeks, dude. It's real soon. I gotta like blast through it. But I got through the 100 and some odd episodes.
That comes out the same week as Ghostbusters?
Yep, the day before.
Oh my god. Okay.
20th. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, man. It's gonna be a good week. Yeah. So that's what I'm on. How about you? What have you been watching?
Yeah, I'm not watching a lot of anything other than Halo's season 2, which I
Mm.
started to hate watch because I really really hated the first season. It just wasn't doing it for me. But then the first two episodes for season 2 debuted at the same time. They were really like really good, and it was a very confusing moment for me because the following week I caught myself like hoping it was going to still be good, and it was. And then the next week was even better. It was like the best episode of the season so far, and of the show, frankly. And I was just like, what is happening right now? I went from a cynical, angry hate watcher to like now I'm actually invested in the show. And somewhere along the lines, it's just like really that healthy mentality that I probably should have walked into the series when I first started watching it, of like, this is not the games. This is its own thing. Let it be its own thing. Do not hold it to being the games or, the novels or the comics or whatever. Cuz like Halo is a very like kind of broy series, right? Like there's not
Yeah.
that much to it. The appeal to Halo for most Halo fans was the multiplayer. And that has a very specific type of community attached to it. But I have always, like, I've never been a multiplayer lover. Like, I would play as a social thing, like, just to play with my friends. My friends want to play Halo, so sure, I'll play Halo. But, like, I love those games for the story, the art design, all that stuff. So for me, the story is actually really important. And I like those characters, even the character, like Master Chief, there's not much to him. But that's because you're supposed to put yourself like, there's a reason they never show his face in the games. So the fact that the series was doing that and putting a face and a personality to a character that there really wasn't a lot to, for me it was a difficult pill to swallow at first. It's kind of like doing that with Link, which is why I'm really kind of worried about the Legend of Zelda film. um but it's kind of one of those things where I felt like they did a lot of things wrong, in addition to things that I don't think I was being totally fair in my mentality going into it. Because even with
Mm.
that like different mentality, I still feel like they dropped the ball on a lot of things in the first season. But I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but like they got it together on the show. It's like really good, and I'm really excited. And there's only like 3 more episodes. I'm pretty sure it's only like 8 episodes per season, and the 5th episode debuted last week. The 6th episode debuts this Thursday, and I'm like, it's a show that I'm really like. I can't wait for next week. You know what I mean? Like because we have
Yeah.
our shows. I mean, maybe you feel the same way. I have shows that I'm really, really invested in. So like Bad Batch, I can't wait for the next episode. Star Wars episodes in general, I can't wait for the next episode. But then there's stuff like 90 Day Fiance that like, yeah, when it's on, I'll watch it. Like, who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah.
It's the yeah, when it's here, whatever. I can't believe Halo is actually a show that I'm looking forward to watching like every week now. It's really bizarre, and I really hope it keeps that up. So anyone who either didn't enjoy season 1 of Halo or is like kind of on the fence with like, oh, should I watch it? I say give it a chance. You do need to watch the first season though, because there are so many things
Mm.
that are different from the show. It might be a little confusing if you just kind of like jump into season 2. Um, but like, and there's some stuff that you kind of need to get used to. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's one thing that it's kind of okay. I'm not gonna mention it because it is kind of a spoiler, but like they're setting things up for even like the Halo 2 and Halo 3 story now, even though technically in the quote unquote timeline, we haven't even gotten to the events of Halo 1. It's more like the Halo Reach era of the overall Halo storyline. So it's watch it. If you're on the fence, watch it.
Okay. I mean,
That's
I'm
where
not
I'm
on the fence. I'm not on the fence. I'm not going
at.
to watch Halo, but I
That's fine.
yeah. I have absolutely no connection to the franchise
Hmm.
whatsoever. So I but that's good. I'm glad that people who like it are enjoying it. I know
Yeah,
that, yeah,
it's
season one
surprising.
had some things that people were sort of quibbling about. But yeah, yeah, so funny. We live in such a weird era of like these adaptations are actually good,
Yeah.
because usually you can just disregard. But
Yeah, right? There was a
yeah,
time it was basically a curse, like, "Oh,
yeah,
they're making a Mortal Kombat movie, alright."
yeah, exactly. But I'm glad for Halo fans. I am not
Yeah,
one of them. So
it's
uh,
cool.
yeah.
I am nervous about Zelda, though. What have we ever talked about Zelda? The Zelda movie? Like, what are
Not really. No, I mean, like, we know so little right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it it depends on how they approach it. It depends on how they approach it and what the goal of it ends up being. So, like, use Sonic and Mario as examples, right?
Mhm.
The Sonic movie, they wanted to do live action and they wanted it to be a family movie, in a way that not a lot of family movies get made these days, which is one of the reasons why I love it so much. um and as that movie, it absolutely succeeds. Like, both of them are fantastic in that sense. Is it necessarily the Sonic movie that I want to make? No. I mean, like, if I made a Sonic movie, the storylines would be ripped from the comic books from the 90s.
They are
And
so good, those comics, man.
yeah, like, I would do like a very serious, like, it would be three movies and it would be a very serious, self-serious. It would still have a lot of humor and still be very fun and still be um like kid oriented, but it would be a very like self-serious world building thing of like, this is what Mobius is, this is who Robotnik is, and and this is who Sonic and the Freedom Fighters are, and what they're fighting against Robotnik for, right? And the stakes would be high, um so that when you kill Robotnik in the second movie, it actually has meaning. Yeah, and yeah, like, I because that everything that like leads up to Sonic number 50 would be sort of like, for those who read the comic books, you know what I'm talking about. Like, that's what I would revolve the whole thing around, in which Sonic does actually defeat Robotnik finally. Robotnik kind of kills himself, but
Yeah.
because it's a kids comic, so Sonic couldn't like actually
Yeah.
murder Robotnik, but he was pretty close. He was pretty close in that. But Robotnik's plan sort of ended up backfiring on him, and he ends up erased from existence. But it doesn't matter because he just comes back as Robo Robotnik anyways. So, yeah, like, yeah, I would make like a very very like self serious Sonic movie, but it wouldn't be live action either. It would be animated. Um, so like, are the Sonic movies what I want? Not necessarily, but do I love them to death? 1,000%. I love
Mhm.
both of those movies. I cannot wait for Knuckles, and yeah, and Sonic 3 later this year. And the fact that we're getting Sonic 3 and Knuckles in the same year is just genius. I love it. They did it. They did it, you guys. Um, to the extent that I keep your eyes on this space, because I'll kind of half announce it now. We're gonna be covering Knuckles as a TV show.
Oh, cool.
There will be like a limited series. It won't be like its own fully. I don't know. It'll probably be on this feed, and then I'll put it on its own feed at some point. But yeah, if you're subscribed on this feed, you're gonna get weekly recap episodes about Knuckles. Um, so yeah, the reason why I'm not fully announcing it is because we haven't given it a title yet. But yeah, I stay tuned, because by the end of this month, you guys will probably have the first episode, which will be me and my co-host for that, talking about the first movie, and then we'll do the second movie, and then all in the lead up to Knuckles premiering in April. But yeah, yeah, just a little piece of news right there at the end of the episode for you guys. But then the Mario movie, like, is sort of a different thing, where they take it's still very self-serious. The world is the world, like, it's a real world, and they go into it, but like, they approached it from a very sort of comedic angle, right? So they took a lot of the stuff from the Mario universe, and they used it for jokes, and uh, did it super effectively.
Mm.
So like that's what Nintendo is doing. That's what they've done, and the success of the Mario movie is the reason why they're now looking at doing Zelda. And it's even same studio, right? There, it's going to be Illumination as well, right?
Is it?
I think so.
No.
I think so.
Zelda or Mario?
Zelda, Zelda.
Zelda's live action.
Is it going to be live? Oh, it's live action. Okay, yeah, man. This is my thing. They're not going to do it right.
Yeah.
I'll just say that. Like, they're not going
I
to do it
don't.
right.
The fact that it's live action, they're
Yeah.
not doing it right.
Zelda. Here's my biggest thing. Zelda doesn't know what to do with Zelda, right? Like, we've talked about this. We talked about this on our Game of the Year episode. Like, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are a couple of the best video games ever made. And they are certainly some of the strongest narrative Zelda games. The fact that Link still doesn't talk in those games in the year 2023 is like, what's going on, guys? Can you just make a proper video game, please? Like, can you stop acting like we're still on the N64? Every other character has dialogue. Like I get that they have this ethos that he's like the silent protagonist because it allows you to, like, put yourself into it. I don't care. I want him to have a character arc. I want Link to have a story. And they kind of halfway did it in the Breath of the Wild games. Because you can include Hyrule Warriors in that as well, right? There's sort of 3 games in that series. With Hyrule Warriors being a prequel. But like, yeah, like that. I mean, that's a prime example of like so much of the story is locked in a game that's like a side game that not a lot of people are going to play because Hyrule Warriors is very inaccessible. Because it's I can't remember what's that genre called, but that
Like
sort of,
Dynasty Warriors.
yeah, like that, like nobody wants to play that. Nobody wants to play that. I bought it. I played it. Nobody wants to play it.
I only bought the newer one for the story, and then the story wasn't even like it's own story. They made
Yeah,
it seem like it was the prequel to Breath of the Wild, and it's not. So it's like, oh,
yeah.
okay.
Um, but yeah, I if Nintendo can't figure out how to approach this franchise, like this IP, and do it in a way that's like a truly like modern, cohesive story that everybody can kind of get behind and like and like canonize it in a way, then like the movie's not going to.
Yeah.
I really don't think, and especially with it's not like they went, let's make a Zelda movie. They went, that Mario movie was really successful.
Yeah.
What else do we have?
Yeah.
And so they looked at it and they went, well, Zelda is the next biggest thing that Nintendo has. So so that's what they're gonna do. And yeah, so they're doing it for the wrong reasons. I don't remember. Do we know who's attached? Like, who's directing, who's writing it?
Oh, I have
Because
no idea.
I'll tell you there is one instance, maybe not one, but the one instance that I can think of where I would be like, okay, yeah, let's do it. If you got anybody who was on the team that wrote Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, the one that just came out last year, if any of those people had anything to do with a Zelda movie, I would have faith in it. Because that's the tone. It actually, like, if you look at that, it's like that's exactly what a Zelda movie should be. Um, but if it's anybody else, I don't think that, I don't know. It'll turn out that it's Chris Terrio or something, and he'll just Link's mom and Ganondorf's mom will be the same person, and then it'll turn out that, Ganondorf is Link's father, or Zelda's father. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, it is some, like, they will try and make it into a Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, and that's the thing that I guarantee you. The first thing that'll be said, is like, yeah, we were really inspired by Game of Thrones. Well, you shouldn't have been. You should have been inspired by The Legend of Zelda, right? So don't. It's like, so to me, it's a bit of a non-starter. It's one of those things where I go like, I don't know. The people who make Zelda don't have their ducks in a row when it comes to Zelda. So Yeah.
So Derek Connolly is writing, and it looks like Wes Ball is both directing and producing.
So that like that right there tells you everything that you need to know, because it's like I don't know who those people are. Who are
Yeah,
those
well,
people?
Derek Connolly, Jurassic World.
Wah, 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 wah. Yeah, we're done.
So,
We're done here. We're done here. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good.
so
It's going to make a real great trailer. A trailer that's going to trick us all into getting our hopes up. And then we're going to be in it and we're going to watch it. And we're going to walk out of that theater the first time going, I can't believe that I just watched that. And we're going to think that that response is good, right? Like in the same way that, like, wow, at the end of Jurassic World, Rexy and Blue teamed up and fought the Indominus, and then the Mosasaur jumps out and eats it. Sorry, spoilers for Jurassic World. I It was like I remember saying, coming out of that movie, having had a great experience in the theater, which at the end of the day is really all we're after, but that's fine. Um, Saying like that was like their like Avengers like circle moment, right? Is when like you get that moment of like Blue comes around the corner to the Lost World theme and then like attacks the Indominus with Rexy attacking the Indominus and is like jumping on its back and slashing it and then jumping onto Rexy, and then like the two of them are fighting it together, and then they push it to the edge and the Mosasaur finishes it off. And it's like that it felt like your Avengers moment. And then after some time I was like, why am I excited about an Avengers moment in a Jurassic movie? That doesn't make any sense. That's not what these movies are supposed to be, right? And then yeah, the Jurassic franchise has just kind of gone on from there. But you can hear me talk at length about that, about Jurassic on the that same off the record episode on Patreon that I just released last week. At length, to the extent that like I outlined what I would do if I rebooted Jurassic Park as a like a you know I I can't remember what do they call it, when it's like a real fancy TV show, um, like on HBO or whatever. I can't remember what the word
oh, I don't know.
that they use for it. I keep thinking legacy, but it's not legacy. It's something else. But in any case, like if it were like an HBO like drama show, right? Like
Mhm.
how I would approach
Fe-
adapting.
feature.
No, it's something else. I can't remember.
Mm.
It'll come to me like an hour from now. But yeah, if you adapted the original book, it's like yeah, and my approach is to go completely the opposite direction and to make it like dead boring for most of it, but in like the good way, in the way that Dune Part Two is, because Dune Part Two is like Dune Part Two is not as boring as the first Dune, which is like a very slow movie. Like Dune Part Two at least has a bunch of action in it because it is the second and third act of the story, but um I yeah, like that slow build up to it, you know. I yeah, not a lot of dinosaurs in my version of Jurassic Park, which is probably a turnoff for a lot of people right at the get go. But it's a lot about like corporate hierarchy and project management and you know genetic power and you know the responsibility of that stuff, and less so about the running and the screaming and the chomping. But go listen to that episode. Support us on Patreon. Go listen, and you'll hear me talk at it length. Actually, if you go to TikTok and Instagram, did I put it on YouTube as well? I think I did. You can see a video of that as well. Listen to it. It's really just a picture with waveform of me talking, but yeah, I snipped out a chunk of it about talking about Alan Grant and how he is in the books versus the movies, and how I make him much more like he was in the books. He's an action hero in the book. If you've never read it, he's so different from the Sam Neill version that's in the film. It's ridiculous. But anyways, Jurassic Park. What were we talking about? The Legend of Zelda? Nope,
uh,
won't be any good.
yeah.
It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. That's I yeah. I would worry. Start worrying now. Start your worrying engines. Yeah. What a note to end our first weekly show on. Thanks for that
Yeah.
one, Joe. Um,
Anytime. Happy
but
to bring
next
the mood down.
yeah, next week we'll be back. We'll be back with more news, and I guess we've already decided in this episode we're going to talk about Dragon Ball Super. So be excited about that. I'm excited about that. It's great. Now I put myself on a timeline. I absolutely have to watch those movies in the next day or two, but I need to anyways because I need to get on X-Men because I am running out of time. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. Don't forget to stay up to date with everything ThunderQuack by following us on social media and our extra content like reviews and reactions on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And thank you to all our faithful ThunderQuack supporters on Patreon. We couldn't do the show without your support. Head to patreon.com/ThunderQuack to get early access and bonus content. That's it. That's it. We did it, Joe. This is our new show, our new old show that is my old show, but it's the new format, the new release schedule, and I don't know. I had a good time. Did you have a good time, Joe?
I always have a good time when we get together.
Aw.
Rhetorical question.
Well, I hope that everybody had a good time listening. Thank you guys for tuning in, and stay frosty. What's up, nerds? It's time for another episode of the ThunderQuack podcast. This week we are talking about Superman First Look. Oh man, I totally botched that. Give me a sec. I'll do that again. It's like finding new rhythms and stuff, right? That's why I'm the host and you're the co-host.
That's right. I just show up. It's perfect.